It was a bright Monday morning when Marcus Johnson arrived at Sunshine Supermarket for his regular shift. The 25-year-old had been working as a cashier at the popular neighborhood store for almost 3 years now. Marcus was known for his warm smile and excellent customer service, which made him popular with the regular shoppers. The supermarket was located in a busy part of town, serving a diverse community. People from all walks of life would come to shop for their groceries, home supplies, and other essentials. The owner, Mr. Robert Davis, was a kind-hearted man in his 60s who treated all his employees like family. He had built the business from scratch over 30 years ago and took great pride in how the store served as a gathering place for the community. Marcus loved his job. He enjoyed the interactions with customers and the friendly atmosphere among the staff. His coworkers included Sarah, a college student working part-time, Miguel, the produce manager who had been with the store for over a decade, and Lisa, the assistant manager who helped keep everything running smoothly. That Monday started like any other day. Marcus arrived 15 minutes early, as he always did. He put his lunch in the staff room refrigerator, tied on his blue Sunshine Supermarket apron, and made sure his name tag was straight. The morning team had their usual quick meeting, where Mr. Davis reminded everyone about the weekly specials and some new products that had arrived over the weekend. "Remember, folks?" Mr. Davis said with his usual enthusiasm. "What makes Sunshine special is how we treat our customers. A smile and a kind word can make someone's day better." As the store opened at 8 a.m., the usual morning shoppers began to trickle in. There were the elderly couples who came early to avoid crowds, mothers dropping their children off at school and then stopping by for groceries, and workers grabbing coffee and breakfast items before heading to their offices. Marcus's register was positioned near the main entrance, making him one of the first faces customers would see when entering the store. He greeted each person with a genuine smile and often remembered details about the regular customers, asking about their families or commenting on the weather. By mid-morning, the store was bustling with activity. The bakery section filled the air with the smell of fresh bread, and the produce department was colorful with newly arranged fruits and vegetables. Marcus had already helped dozens of customers check out their purchases, from small handfuls of items to carts packed full of weekly shopping. Around 11:30 a.m., during a brief lull in customers, Marcus noticed an unfamiliar woman entering the store. She appeared to be in her late 50s, dressed in expensive-looking clothes and carrying a designer handbag. Her hair was perfectly styled, and she walked with the confidence of someone used to getting her way. Marcus didn't think much of it at the time. New customers came to the store every day. Little did Marcus know that this particular customer would soon create a situation that would test him, shock the other shoppers, and ultimately reveal the true character of everyone involved. As she began collecting items in her shopping basket, there was no indication of the confrontation that would soon unfold at his checkout counter, a confrontation that would change the atmosphere of the friendly neighborhood supermarket and lead to a response from Mr. Davis that no one would ever forget. Around noon, the store became busier as the lunch rush began. Office workers lined up for fresh sandwiches from the deli counter, and the checkout lines grew longer. Marcus kept his friendly attitude despite the increasing pressure, efficiently scanning items and chatting with customers as he bagged their groceries. Marcus noticed the well-dressed woman he had seen earlier now approaching the checkout area. Her shopping basket was filled with premium items, organic vegetables, imported cheese, and an expensive bottle of wine. She looked around at the different checkout lines, seemingly trying to decide which one to join. There were 3 registers open. Lisa was handling one, while Sarah operated another, and Marcus was at his usual spot near the entrance. The woman first walked toward Sarah's line but stopped when she saw there were 4 people waiting. Lisa had 3 customers in her line. Marcus only had one elderly man who was almost finished paying. After a moment of hesitation, the woman walked to Marcus's register and placed her basket on the counter. As the elderly customer left with a friendly "Thank you, young man," Marcus turned his attention to the woman. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Did you find everything you were looking for today?" Marcus asked with his usual smile. The woman did not respond to his greeting. Instead, she stared at him with a strange expression. Her eyes narrowed, and her lips pressed into a thin line. Marcus wasn't sure what to make of her reaction, but he continued being professional. "Would you like paper or plastic bags today?" he asked as he reached for the first item, a package of imported crackers. Suddenly, the The woman placed her hand on top of her items, preventing Marcus from picking them up. "I've changed my mind," she said loudly. "I don't want you to touch my groceries." Marcus was confused. "Is there a problem, ma'am?" "Yes, there's a problem," the woman replied, her voice growing louder. "I don't want to be served by you. I want a different cashier." The customer behind her, a young mother with a small child, looked up from her phone with surprise. Others nearby also began to notice the scene. Marcus, trying to remain calm, asked, "Is there something I can help you with? Did I do something wrong?" The woman scoffed. "I simply prefer not to have someone like you handling my food and my credit card. Can't I request a different cashier if I want to?" By now, it was clear to everyone what she meant. The racial undertones in her statement were unmistakable. An uncomfortable silence fell over the nearby checkout area. Marcus felt his face grow hot with embarrassment and hurt, but he maintained his composure. He had experienced racism before, but rarely so publicly or blatantly. Lisa, who had overheard the exchange from her register, caught Marcus's eye and gave him a sympathetic look. She quickly finished with her current customer and turned on her light to signal she was closing her lane. "I'll be right over," she called, moving to assist with the situation. But before Lisa could reach them, Miguel, who had been restocking a nearby display, stepped forward. "Excuse me, ma'am, but what exactly do you mean by someone like him?" he asked, his voice steady but firm. The woman turned to Miguel, seeming surprised that someone was questioning her. "That's between me and the management," she replied coldly. "I'm a paying customer, and I have the right to choose who serves me." By now, other customers were openly watching the confrontation. Some looked uncomfortable, while others appeared angry on Marcus's behalf. The young mother behind the woman in line took her child's hand and moved to Sarah's line instead, giving the woman a disapproving glance as she left. Marcus stood frozen behind his register, unsure of how to proceed. In his 3 years at Sunshine Supermarket, nothing like this had ever happened. He looked toward the office, hoping Mr. Davis would emerge and handle the situation. Little did he know that the store owner was already on his way, having been alerted by another employee about the disturbance at the front of the store. The tension at Marcus's checkout counter grew thicker by the second. Lisa had now arrived and stood beside Marcus, her face showing a mix of concern and determination. "Ma'am, I'm the assistant manager. What seems to be the problem?" Lisa asked in a professional tone, though everyone could hear the strain in her voice. The woman straightened her posture, seeming pleased that management had gotten involved. "I simply requested another cashier. I don't think that's too much to ask," she said, speaking to Lisa as if Marcus wasn't even there. Lisa glanced at Marcus, who was still standing quietly, his hands resting on the edge of the counter. His expression remained calm, but Lisa had worked with him long enough to see the hurt in his eyes. "Our cashiers are all highly trained professionals," Lisa explained. "Marcus is one of our best employees. I assure you we can handle your transaction efficiently." The woman shook her head. "I've made my preference clear. I'd like you to check me out instead." By now, a small crowd had gathered. The normal busy hum of the supermarket had quieted as people stopped to watch what was happening. Sarah had stopped scanning items at her register, and even the deli workers were peering over their counter to see the commotion. Miguel, who had remained nearby, stepped closer again. "Lisa, I think we all know what's really happening here," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This isn't about service quality." Several customers nodded in agreement. An elderly woman in line behind the troublemaker tutted disapprovingly. "Young man," she called to Marcus, "I'd be happy to have you serve me any time." The well-dressed woman's face flushed red, whether from embarrassment or anger, it wasn't clear. "This is ridiculous. I'm a long-time customer and I have rights. Get me your manager right now." "That won't be necessary," came a deep, calm voice from behind them. Everyone turned to see Mr. Davis walking purposefully toward the checkout area. His normally friendly face was serious as he assessed the situation. The store fell completely silent. Even the background music seemed to have paused at the perfect dramatic moment. "I'm Robert Davis, the owner of this establishment," he said, coming to stand beside Marcus. He placed a supportive hand on the young man's shoulder. "I couldn't help but overhear. Is there a problem with our service today?" The woman seemed momentarily taken aback by Mr. Davis's presence but quickly recovered. I simply requested a different cashier. Your staff is making a scene over a customer preference. Mr. Davis nodded slowly, as if considering her words carefully. Customer preferences are indeed important to us, he said, but so is the dignity of my employees. He looked directly into the woman's eyes. In my 30 years of running this business, I learned to recognize the difference between a service complaint and something else entirely. Would you care to explain exactly why you don't want Marcus to serve you? The challenge in his question was unmistakable. A few customers shifted uncomfortably, while others leaned in closer, not wanting to miss what would happen next. The woman glanced around, suddenly aware that she had no allies in the crowd. I simply don't feel comfortable with him, she stammered. And why is that? Mr. Davis pressed, his voice remaining calm but firm. The woman didn't answer directly. Instead, she tried a different approach. I spend thousands of dollars in this store every year. I'm a valuable customer. Mr. Davis considered this for a moment. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and removed several bills. Marcus, he said, turning to his employee, would you please count how much the items in this lady's basket come to? Marcus quickly calculated the total. About $78, sir. Mr. Davis nodded and counted out 8 crisp $10 bills. He held them out to the woman. Ma'am, here's $80. Consider your groceries paid for. But I must ask you to leave my store now and not return. The woman's mouth fell open in shock. No one had expected this response from the usually accommodating store owner. The gathered crowd watched in stunned silence, waiting to see what would happen next. The woman stared at Mr. Davis's outstretched hand holding the money, her face a mixture of shock and anger. She made no move to take the bills. You can't be serious, she said, her voice rising. You're asking me to leave? Do you have any idea who I am in this community? Mr. Davis remained calm, keeping his hand extended. With all due respect, ma'am, your standing in the community doesn't grant you the right to disrespect my staff. The money is to cover your groceries. Please take it and exit the store. By now, the entire front of Sunshine Supermarket had come to a standstill. Customers in other lines were watching openly, some with phones partially raised as if debating whether to record the confrontation. The store's background music seemed oddly cheerful against the tense scene playing out. The woman looked around, perhaps hoping to find support among the other shoppers. Instead, she was met with disapproving stares and crossed arms. An older gentleman near the customer service desk shook his head slowly. This is outrageous, she declared, grabbing her designer purse from the counter. All of you know my husband plays golf with the mayor. We donate to every charity event in this town. Mr. Davis nodded patiently. And I'm sure the mayor and those charities would be interested to hear about your behavior today. The money is still here if you want it. Marcus stood silently behind his register, watching the scene unfold. Despite the woman's hurtful words, he felt a growing sense of pride in his workplace. Never before had he seen Mr. Davis take such a firm stand. The woman glared at Mr. Davis, then at Marcus, and finally at the growing crowd of onlookers. She seemed to realize she was fighting a losing battle. Keep your money, she snapped, stepping away from her basket of groceries. But this isn't over. You'll be hearing from me. She turned sharply, her heels clicking loudly on the tile floor as she marched toward the exit. Just before she reached the automatic doors, she turned back to face the store. I've been shopping here for 7 years, she called out. You've just lost a loyal customer. Mr. Davis simply replied, We'll manage, ma'am. Have a good day. As the woman stormed out into the parking lot, the tension inside the store broke. A few customers began to clap, and soon many others joined in. Mr. Davis raised his hands, looking slightly embarrassed by the applause. All right, folks, he said with a gentle smile. Let's get back to our shopping, shall we? Miguel, could you please return these items to their proper places? Miguel nodded and began emptying the abandoned basket. Other employees, who had been watching from various parts of the store, slowly returned to their duties. Mr. Davis turned to Marcus, who was still standing quietly behind his register. Marcus, would you mind joining me in my office for a moment? Marcus nodded, a flicker of concern crossing his face. Despite Mr. Davis's supportive actions, he wondered if there would be repercussions. After all, the woman had mentioned connections to important people in town. Lisa quickly stepped in to take over Marcus's register as he followed Mr. Davis to the back of the store. The small office was cluttered but organized, much like Mr. Davis himself. Photos of store events and employee gatherings covered one wall. Mr. Davis closed the door and gestured for Marcus to take a seat. "Are you okay?" Mr. Davis asked, his formal demeanor from earlier softening into genuine concern. Marcus took a deep breath. "Yes, sir, I'm fine. Thank you for what you did out there." Mr. Davis waved away the thanks. "No need to thank me. What happened today was unacceptable." He sat down in his creaky office chair and leaned forward. "In all my years running this store, I've learned that some things are more important than money. My employees' dignity is one of those things." Marcus nodded, feeling a lump forming in his throat. He had encountered racism before in his life, but rarely had someone stood up for him so publicly and decisively. "I'm sorry you had to experience that," Mr. Davis continued, "but I want you to know something important." He paused, making sure Marcus was looking him in the eye. "That woman does not represent this community or this store. You are valued here, not just as an employee but as a person." Outside the office, the store had returned to its normal busy rhythm, but something had changed at Sunshine Supermarket, and everyone knew the story of what happened that day would spread quickly throughout the small community. The next morning, Marcus arrived at work feeling slightly nervous. After his conversation with Mr. Davis yesterday, he had gone home with mixed emotions. While he felt supported and valued, he couldn't help wondering if there would be consequences from the incident. As he walked through the employee entrance, he immediately noticed something different. The usual morning chatter among staff seemed more animated, and several coworkers looked up when he entered, offering smiles and nods. "There he is," Miguel called out, walking over to give Marcus a friendly pat on the back. "How are you feeling today, man?" "I'm okay," Marcus replied, somewhat surprised by the attention. "Just ready for a normal day." Sarah approached with a cup of coffee in hand. "Made this for you," she said, passing it to him. "2 sugars, just how you like it." Marcus accepted the coffee with a confused smile. "Thanks, but what's going on? Why is everyone acting so different?" Before anyone could answer, Lisa appeared from the break room. "You haven't seen it yet, have you?" she asked, holding up her phone. "Check this out." Marcus leaned in to look at the screen. It was a social media post from a local community group. The post described what had happened at Sunshine Supermarket the day before, praising Mr. Davis for standing up against racism and supporting his employee. The post had hundreds of likes and dozens of comments, most expressing support for the store and declaring intentions to shop there more frequently. "It's been shared over 2,000 times since last night," Lisa explained. "People are calling Mr. Davis a hero." Marcus scrolled through some of the comments, his eyes widening. Many were from regular customers he recognized, expressing their support. Others were from people he'd never met, saying they planned to visit the store specifically because of the stand Mr. Davis had taken. "This is wow," Marcus said, not knowing how to process the outpouring of support. The staff meeting bell rang, calling everyone to gather near the manager's office. As Marcus joined the circle of employees, he noticed Mr. Davis looking unusually tired but determined. "Good morning, everyone," Mr. Davis began. "I'm sure most of you have heard about what happened yesterday." He glanced at Marcus with a small smile. "I want to address it before we open the store today." The employees fell silent, giving their full attention to the owner. "What happened yesterday was unfortunate, but it's given me an opportunity to make something clear," Mr. Davis continued. "This store has always stood for treating everyone with respect and dignity, customers and employees alike. That will never change as long as I'm in charge." He paused, looking around at the faces of his staff. "I've received some calls overnight. Some supportive, some not so much. But I want you all to know that I stand by what I did, and I would do it again in a heartbeat." Lisa raised her hand. "What about the woman's threats? She mentioned knowing the mayor." Mr. Davis chuckled. "Funny you should mention that. I actually got a call from Mayor Thompson himself this morning. Apparently, he's heard about what happened too." He wanted me to know that he supports our zero-tolerance policy for discrimination and that he's looking forward to his usual Saturday morning bagel run. This brought laughter from the group, easing some of the tension. Now, Mr. Davis continued, his tone becoming more serious. We may have some extra customers today, curious about what happened. Some might even come in to show support. Let's serve them all with the same respect and professionalism we always do. And if anyone asks about yesterday, simply say that at Sunshine Supermarket, we believe in treating everyone with dignity. Nothing more needs to be said. As the meeting ended and employees dispersed to their stations, Mr. Davis approached Marcus privately. The police chief called me last night, he said in a low voice. Apparently our customer from yesterday has quite a history of similar incidents around town. Nothing illegal, just a pattern of problematic behavior. Marcus nodded, not surprised. The woman had seemed practiced in her approach. Just thought you should know you weren't singled out, Mr. Davis added. Some people just carry ugliness inside them, and unfortunately, sometimes it spills out onto others. As Marcus took his position at Register 3, he looked out at the store that had suddenly become more than just his workplace. For the first time, he truly felt like he belonged here, not just as an employee, but as part of something important. As predicted by Mr. Davis, Sunshine Supermarket experienced an unusual surge in customers that day. By mid-morning, the parking lot was fuller than it typically would be on a weekday. Marcus noticed many unfamiliar faces among the shoppers, and more than a few people seemed to be making a point of choosing his checkout line specifically. Around 11 o'clock, an elegant elderly woman with silver hair approached Marcus's register with only a small carton of eggs in her basket. She could have easily used the express lane, which had no waiting customers, but she deliberately stood in Marcus's line behind 3 other shoppers. When it was finally her turn, she placed her eggs on the counter and looked directly at Marcus. "Young man," she said, her voice clear and strong despite her age, "I've lived in this town for 76 years. I've seen a lot of changes, some good and some bad. What happened in this store yesterday was definitely one of the good ones." Marcus smiled politely as he scanned her purchase. "Thank you, ma'am. That's $2.49 for the eggs." The woman handed him $3 bills. "My daughter showed me what people were saying online about this store. I don't understand all that social media business, but I know right from wrong. My late husband and I marched with Dr. King back in the day, you know." Marcus handed her the change. "Really? That must have been an incredible experience." The woman nodded, her eyes bright with memories. "It was. And sometimes I worry that the younger generations have forgotten what we fought for. But then I hear stories like what happened here, and it gives me hope." She carefully placed her eggs in her purse. "You tell Mr. Davis that Edith Blackwell says he did his parents proud yesterday." As the day progressed, similar interactions continued. Some customers were obvious in their support, making comments directly to Marcus. Others simply smiled more warmly than usual or left larger tips in the store's charity collection jar. Around lunchtime, a delivery arrived that no one had been expecting. A local florist brought in a beautiful arrangement of flowers with a card addressed to the staff of Sunshine Supermarket. Lisa opened it and read aloud. "Thank you for standing up for what's right. Your community stands with you." The card was signed by the pastor of a church several blocks away. Mr. Davis placed the flowers near the entrance where all customers could see them. The news continued to spread throughout the day. A reporter from the local paper called, asking for an interview with Mr. Davis about the incident. He politely declined, saying that he hadn't done anything special, just what any decent person would do. By the afternoon shift, Marcus noticed something else unexpected. The woman who had caused the scene the previous day was now being identified in social media comments. Apparently, she was Mrs. Eleanor Whitfield, wife of a prominent local businessman. Some commenters mentioned previous encounters with her at other establishments where she had displayed similar behavior. As Marcus was taking his late afternoon break, his phone buzzed with a text message from his mother. "So proud of you for handling yourself with dignity yesterday. Your father and I raised you right. Also, did you know your story is trending? My bridge club can't stop talking about it." Marcus smiled and shook his head. He hadn't told his parents about the incident, not wanting to worry them. News really did travel fast in a small town. Just as Marcus was finishing his break, Lisa poked her head into the staff room. "Marcus, there's someone here to see you. Says he's from City Hall." Marcus felt a moment of anxiety. Was this connected to the woman's threats about knowing the mayor? When he reached the front of the store, he found Mr. Davis speaking with a well-dressed man in his 40s who carried a leather portfolio. "Ah, here he is," Mr. Davis said, waving Marcus over. "Marcus, this is James Porter, the mayor's chief of staff." The man extended his hand with a warm smile. "Mr. Johnson, it's a pleasure to meet you. Mayor Thompson sent me personally to extend an invitation. He's hosting a community forum on inclusivity next month and would be honored if you and Mr. Davis would attend as special guests." Marcus shook the man's hand, completely surprised by this turn of events. What had begun as an ordinary workday had somehow connected him to the highest levels of local government. The next few days brought even more unexpected developments for Marcus and the entire staff at Sunshine Supermarket. The local newspaper ran a front-page story titled, "Local Business Owner Takes Stand Against Discrimination." The article featured a photograph of Mr. Davis and Marcus standing proudly in front of the store. Though Mr. Davis had initially declined an interview, the reporter had gathered enough information from witnesses to piece together what had happened. By Thursday morning, the story had been picked up by several online news outlets across the state. A popular morning radio show discussed the incident, with many callers phoning in to express their support for Mr. Davis's actions. One caller even suggested that other business owners should follow his example. Marcus found himself suddenly recognized wherever he went. At the gas station, the attendant refused to let him pay for his coffee. At his evening class at the community college, his professor mentioned the incident and used it as an example in their business ethics discussion. "It's weird," Marcus told Sarah during their shared lunch break on Thursday. "I didn't do anything special. I just stood there while it all happened." Sarah shook her head. "That's not true. You handled it with dignity. Some people would have lost their temper or quit on the spot. You showed real strength." Meanwhile, Mr. Davis was dealing with his own newfound attention. Calls were coming in from larger news networks requesting interviews. Local business owners stopped by to shake his hand. Even competing supermarkets sent messages of support. But not all reactions were positive. By Friday, rumors began circulating that Mrs. Whitfield's husband was threatening legal action, claiming the store had discriminated against his wife. Though most people dismissed these rumors as empty threats, Mr. Davis took them seriously enough to consult with the store's lawyer. "Don't worry," he assured the staff during their morning meeting. "Our lawyer says they don't have a case. We have the right to refuse service to anyone who disrupts our business or mistreats our employees." On Saturday morning, a week after the incident, something remarkable happened. As the store opened at 8 a.m., the staff was surprised to find a crowd of about 50 people gathered outside. They were carrying handmade signs with messages like "Hate has no home here" and "Support Sunshine Supermarket." Lisa rushed to Mr. Davis's office. "Sir, you need to come see this." When Mr. Davis emerged from the store to greet the crowd, they broke into applause. A woman stepped forward, introducing herself as the chairperson of the local community association. "We wanted to show our support," she explained. "Not just with words online, but in person, and with our wallets too." She gestured to the crowd behind her. "We're all here to do our weekly shopping and to thank you for standing up for what's right." Mr. Davis, usually confident and articulate, found himself momentarily speechless. He cleared his throat and simply said, "The doors are open. Everyone is welcome." As the crowd entered the store, Marcus manned his register with a mixture of emotions. He felt proud, overwhelmed, and slightly uncomfortable with all the attention. But mostly, he felt grateful to be part of a community that was willing to take a stand against racism. Around noon, an unexpected visitor approached Marcus's checkout line. It was the elderly woman from earlier in the week, Edith Blackwell. This time she wasn't alone. With her was a tall, distinguished-looking man with warm brown skin and gray at his temples. "Marcus," Edith said when it was her turn, "I want you to meet someone. This is my friend, Dr. William Thompson. He was the first black physician in our town, back in 1962. I thought he might want to meet you." The older man extended his hand to Marcus. "Young man, I've heard a lot about you. When I first came to this town, no one would rent me office space. Now I see people lining up to support a young black man who was disrespected. Things change, sometimes slowly, but they do change." Marcus shook Dr. Thompson's hand, feeling a connection across generations. Thank you for paving the way, sir. Dr. Thompson smiled. No, thank you. Every time someone stands their ground with dignity, as you did, it makes the path a little easier for those who come after. As Marcus watched the elderly pair walk away, he realized something important. What had happened wasn't just about him or Mr. Davis or even Mrs. Whitfield. It was about a community deciding what kind of place it wanted to be. 1 month after the incident that had changed Sunshine Supermarket forever, Mr. Davis called a special meeting before the store opened. All employees, even those not scheduled to work that day, were asked to attend. The staff gathered in the recently expanded break room, curious about the announcement. Marcus arrived early, as was his habit. In the weeks since the confrontation with Mrs. Whitfield, his life had taken several unexpected turns. Mayor Thompson's community forum on inclusivity had been a huge success, with over 300 people attending. Marcus had been asked to share his experience, and though public speaking made him nervous, he managed to deliver a heartfelt speech about dignity and respect that received a standing ovation. As the other employees filed into the break room, Marcus noticed several unfamiliar faces. There was a photographer setting up equipment in one corner, and a woman in a business suit whom he didn't recognize. Mr. Davis stood at the front of the room, looking more formal than usual in a button-up shirt and tie. Good morning, everyone, Mr. Davis began once all the staff had arrived. Thank you for coming in early today. As you know, the past month has been quite extraordinary for our little store. The employees nodded and murmured in agreement. Since the incident, Sunshine Supermarket had seen a 30% increase in customer traffic. People were driving from neighboring towns just to shop there. The store's social media page, previously followed by only a few hundred locals, now had thousands of followers. What happened here was unfortunate, Mr. Davis continued, but it sparked something important in our community. It reminded us that standing up for what's right matters, even when it's difficult or might cost us something. He gestured to the woman in the business suit. This is Ms. Jennifer Adams from the State Business Association. She has something to share with us. Ms. Adams stepped forward with a warm smile. Good morning. The State Business Association annually recognizes businesses that demonstrate exceptional commitment to community values. This year, we've created a special award for ethical business leadership, and Sunshine Supermarket is our first recipient. She unveiled a beautiful plaque that read, Presented to Sunshine Supermarket and Robert Davis for demonstrating exceptional ethical leadership and commitment to human dignity. The room erupted in applause as Mr. Davis accepted the award, looking both proud and slightly embarrassed by the recognition. This belongs to all of us, he said, holding up the plaque. Every person in this room contributes to the atmosphere of respect we've created here. After the presentation, Mr. Davis made another announcement that surprised everyone. The publicity from last month's events has brought in more business than we expected. As a result, I'm implementing some changes. He outlined his plans: a 5% raise for all employees, expanded health benefits, and a new college scholarship program for staff. The photographer captured the employees' delighted reactions. And there's one more thing, Mr. Davis said, his voice becoming more serious. Marcus, would you come up here, please? Surprised, Marcus made his way to the front of the room. Marcus Johnson joined us 3 years ago as a part-time cashier while attending college, Mr. Davis said, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder. During that time, he's shown exceptional character, work ethic, and leadership potential. I'm pleased to announce that when Marcus completes his business degree next month, he will be joining our management team as assistant store director. The announcement was met with cheers and congratulations. Marcus stood in shock, overwhelmed by the opportunity being presented to him. Thank you, Mr. Davis, he managed to say. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Mr. Davis replied. You've earned this through your hard work and character. As the meeting concluded and employees began preparing for the day, Marcus found himself reflecting on the strange journey of the past month. What had begun as a painful encounter with racism had transformed into an opportunity not just for him, but for the entire community to grow stronger. Later that day, as Marcus was helping a young mother load groceries into her car, she recognized him from the newspaper stories. My daughter asked me why your story was important, the woman said. I told her it's because sometimes standing up to bad things can create good things. Is that right? Marcus smiled, thinking about everything that had happened. Yes, he replied. That's exactly right. As he walked back into Sunshine Supermarket, Marcus noticed the new sign Mr. Davis had installed above the entrance. It read, "Everyone welcome here." Simple words that meant everything.